My name is Stuart Hanlon. I'm Sheila's brother-in-law. I'm married to her sister Kathleen. And I live in San Francisco with my two sons, Liam and Rory. I'm going to talk about Sheila personally because, like, I don't know many of you. I don't know much of her work life, which other people will talk about. I know Sheila's political life somewhat from talking to her, but I was not there. She was older than me. Her and George were older. We were at Columbia at a better time, 1966. But I know Sheila, I've learned a lot from her, and I think the best way I can try to explain it is through some stories, and whether they work or not is kind of irrelevant. But Sheila let me in. When I met Sheila and George with Kathy, I think only Matt was alive, so it was a really long time ago. And these stories, at least that I can remember, Sheila taught me how to be a parent, how to be a husband, how not to cry. Didn't do that very well, Sheila. These are hard moments, and it's hard not to cry, and yet we're here to celebrate the positive, which there were so many of. So I think I had no idea about how to be a parent. And when, I'm pretty sure it was Hartlow, and Kathy was pregnant with Liam, and I was really scared about how to be a father. I hadn't even been very good with dogs, so the idea of a son or daughter was just beyond me. They were at our house in the Mission in San Francisco, and I'm pretty sure it was Nathaniel who fell face first on a stair leaving. And the blood was everywhere, and I'm like, oh, fuck. It was like, what's going to happen? And Sheila just picked him up, went to San Francisco General, it was 2 blocks away, had him stitched up, and came back, and they had dinner before they left. And I thought, wow, this is really doable. I mean, if you learn to not panic, if you learn to understand that things happen with kids that you don't expect, that your life is dedicated to them, and everything else stops for them, I could do this. And I told it to Kathy, who had learned so much from Sheila growing up, and she looked at me and said, duh. That's the way it works, you give up everything else for your children, and you deal with emergencies, and you just move on. So that was a really good lesson. And then Matt came and lived with us for a summer in San Francisco. We were the West Coast family, we were the West Coast where it was fun to go. And Matt had a big bike accident. He was about 12 or 13. And he really hurt himself. It looked worse than it was, but it was bad. And I said, Matt, what do you want? And Matt, to his credit, said, wine. So I gave it to him, and I called up Sheila, and her response said, did he want white or red? And again, it was silly, but it was so real about Sheila. She understood that there was no right way or wrong way to parent. She and I discussed parenting a lot, especially after my wife died. Her sister died of cancer 15 years ago. And I had no idea how to do this. And Sheila was one of the 2 people I talked to. And she said, there's no emergency that can't be fixed. There's no problem that can't be worked out. You just have to put yourself to do it when it happens, and don't dwell on it and don't fret. And it got me through some really tough times with these 2 guys. Not that they were bad, but stuff happened that you don't expect as a parent. Another thing about Sheila that I think those of us who know her well, who've been to her house, is an incredible cook. And she does it with such flair and so ease. It's like, I know my friend Bob's daughter Sophie was getting married in September when Sheila was well. And I came out with my sons to the wedding. Bob was here, and Sophie's here, and her husband's here. And Sheila said, why don't we have a dinner? And this was on Tuesday for Thursday. And she had this sit-down incredible dinner for 30, out of like that. While she worked, you all know what do everything at work, but she did at work. So she worked all day. Of course, George did nothing, but that's okay. It's like, he's paying the price now. He's figuring out, how do you get through these things? But no, George did a lot, but he did the cleanup and the shopping, right, George? And then we all did cleanup with Sheila, because she didn't clean up after dinner. She made them. They were great. Anyway, so There was a time they had the Ryans, Sheila and Kathy and Marnie's, who's not here in Cambodia, and John, who's here, her brother. Their parents had a house in Cape Cod, and Bourne, right over the bridge. And I had never been to Cape Cod, so to me, this is great. We're in the Cape. And we went 4 or 5 summers as 2 families. But the first summer, we were driving to the Bourne Bridge. We were driving either, I think, from the Cape or back, I don't know, we were driving one of the ways. And Sheila was saying, what do we want for dessert? And Kathy wanted bagel basket, and I wanted something else, and we were arguing. And Sheila said, I'll just make them both. And she made these desserts for 2 families with the same kind of ease at which she raised her children and dealt with their friends and made dinners for everybody. And again, you learn from that how to live your life. These are all, they seem so minor, but they're life lessons as you look back. Because when someone dies who you love, you look back and say, what did I learn from them? What have they taught me? And what do I get from a life like hers, which was so amazing? You get life lessons. You learn. Without knowing it, someone like Sheila teaches you how to live your life. And I needed a lot of teaching. I mean, when my wife died, I was lost. And she was an anchor. Back to stories. It's so much easier to tell stories. There was a time we went on the Colorado River with Bob Holman's family, my family, and the Camel Meadows. And we took a rafting trip for 7 days and a long time. And we're on the boat, the biggest rapid. Somebody went overboard, and I heard one of the kids yell, it's Stuart. And I said, no, I'm here. And then all of a sudden, George said, where's my wife? And Sheila this was scary. And we looked and we saw her life jacket like 150, 200 yards down the way, but we didn't see her head. And we had no idea. We got over there, and we got her out, and she was fine. And I said, Sheila, what was it like? And she said, it was so wonderful. It was so wonderful going through the rapids and going in the water. I was so free. And I was thinking, George was like scared to death, right? We were petrified, and she was having the time of her life. And she was not the kind of person who would have made that up. She would have said, I was scared. But she wasn't, she was floating. I guess these stories, I don't know if they mean anything. They mean stuff to me, having been through them and those of us. But a final trip I took with Sheila and George and their family, and mine was to Maine a couple of years ago. And we rented a house, and the house came equipped. And we got there first, and we thought, this house is great. And then Sheila arrived, and she brought a kitchen with her to feed an army. And it was just, we all cooked, but there was only one person in charge. And I guess with Sheila, there was one person in charge. And I just saw it was that way at work, and in, the work she did at the hospital and in her other life that I didn't know. Sheila was in charge in the best way people are. She didn't push herself. She didn't tell people what to do. She did it through doing. And showing us how to live. And I think we all die. But it's how we live our lives. You never knew I did public speaking for a living. But it's how we live our lives that is the measure of who we are. And she is the best.